Good afternoon, everyone. If I could get the candidates to come up to the front table, and get seated, we'll get started here in about a minute. Thank you very much. I'm Marlon Spiro. I'm the president of the Springfield City Club, and we'd like to welcome you to our House 7 candidate forum. We're excited to partner with the League of Women Voters of Lane County for this forum. And we have a packed list of questions. But before we get started, just a few things, housekeeping. If you aren't on our email list and you would like to be to get notices of all future programs, please fill out this sheet. It's on your desk, sorry, sound like a teacher, on the table there. And we'll make sure to get you on our distribution list. If you would like to become a member of Springfield City Club and support these kind of forums and efforts to bring programs forward, we're always welcoming new members. And this sheet on your table is our membership application. And if I could get the other board members in the room to at least raise their hand. So thank you to them for their time. This is, or either part of their job or volunteering, and we really appreciate that. And if you have questions about membership, feel free to ask one of them after the meeting. If you would like to ask a question or at least pose a question for the candidates to answer, there's this form on your table. I'll be coming around periodically throughout the forum, collecting those and giving them the page. And she'll bring them, sort through them and bring them up to Callie, and we'll get them on the list. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Callie with the League of Women's Voters to introduce the candidates and also just to kind of give us some sideboards for the forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Springfield City Club for putting on these forums, and thank you all for being here with us today. Let me get my computer pulled back up here. So my name is Ky Fireside, and I'm here today moderating this forum on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lane County. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization working since 1920 to protect and expand voting rights and ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. One really important aspect of the League's work is our vote411.org website, where my voice has been cracking all day. Where we offer all the information we need to prepare for our election, including candidate profiles, ballot measure explanations, in both written and video form. And again, that website is vote411.org. I think that's definitely as of today. From yeah. Our Lake County chapter, okay. Nearly 300 members. It is the second largest chapter after Portland. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the League of Women Voters, you can learn more and sign up on lwvlc.org. And lastly, before we get started, please note that due to changes in USPS policy, mail, including your mailed-in ballot, is no longer postmarked here in town. It's now postmarked when it reaches the Portland processing facility, which means if you mail your ballot in on election day, it very likely will not be postmarked in time and your vote will probably not be counted. So it's important that you either mail your ballot in at least a few days in advance or go drop it off at one of the official ballot drop boxes across the county. We ask that you let your friends and your family and your neighbors know about this change as well. And now to kick it off, we'll do our candidate introductions. So the candidates will go in alphabetical order with 2 minutes to introduce themselves and why they're running for Oregon House District 7. And candidates, please take note of the timekeeper. Yellow card means that you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red card means that your time is up. So Ky Fireside, we'll start with you. Thank you. Is it on? No. Nope. Should be. Do you want to come up to the podium? How about now? No. Oh, what? Come on. Oh, thanks.
Hi, I'm Ky Fireside. I'm an archaeologist by profession. I'm a former 911 dispatcher. I live just outside the Springfield, city limits. I am here because we are in a total crisis, and that crisis has been caused by electoral and legislative choices that have been made at the federal level. And I believe that the way to solve that, the way to stand up against that, is electoral and legislative choices at the state level. This past session, I was up in Salem. I helped pass Senate Bill 1516, which I helped write. It's some privacy legislation. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about it later. And I really want to prioritize getting healthcare for all. I want to prioritize human rights because, again, the federal government is just attacking vulnerable people. And I want to make sure that we've got solid workers' rights in Oregon. As the National Labor Relations Board diminishes its power, I want to make sure that we are protected at the state level. And yeah, those are my priorities. I know we're in a bit of a rush, so I don't even need to take this whole 2 minutes here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ky. Hi, Casey Huffman. I live in Springfield in the River Glen area. I have a Ridge. Been there for 23 years. Married, have 4 kids. Was at the pretty firm for 20 something years until about 4 years ago. And then took over the Browns practice. The reason I'm running is community service. It's something that we need to do. It's been something that's been a part of my life forever. I've been on a number of boards. I've been watching what John has done in Salem for a long time and appreciate that. There are a number of issues that we all face, and my approach to dealing with issues is to find out everything I can about an issue, sit down and talk to people that disagree, and then try to find out where there's common ground. To me, that's a collaborative approach that typically works better than this is what's going to happen and they tell you what to do approach. And I think that cuts across all issues that are out there. Funding is always an issue. We're probably getting some questions about that. I would certainly look for advice from anybody out there, right? Because I don't know that there's one answer to it. I have 4 kids. I also coach baseball in my somewhat free time. I enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you. I want to thank the City Club and the League of Women Voters. These forums are so important for us to engage, particularly in Springfield, I think. So I've served as your city councilor for the past 6 years through the pandemic, working on police reform and digging into stewarding resources during all the changes and challenges. These are hard times, and hard times require experienced, compassionate, and focused leadership. This is the time for collaboration and common sense, for putting the needs of ordinary people at the center of our decisions, and for strengthening the accountability for how we spend taxpayer resources, and for showing up ready to build a future with opportunities and a focus on making room for everyone. This is not a time for luxuries or for ignoring the everyday concerns of the residents of Springfield and House District 7. And here's what I plan to bring to my work in Salem. Working to eliminate barriers to housing at all levels, growing good paying, living wage jobs, working to create an environment where small businesses can grow and thrive, and getting families what they need to live their best lives in Springfield. Supporting our seniors and working to keep costs affordable and delivering on improvements to education, healthcare costs, and public safety that is both professional and progressive. Even with a strong focus on issues I know Springfielders care about, the future is uncertain. And we will be facing monumental challenges that we haven't even begun to fathom when the legislature convenes in 2027. My commitment to you is that I will roll up my sleeves and bring everything I've got to representing you, my decades of work in public service, my ability to work collaboratively with people from all walks of life, and my solid working class values and drama-free approach to problem solving. Springfield, I've got your back.
Thank you. As we begin the Q&A section of today's forum, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer, and there will be no rebuttals. Again, candidates, please take note of the timekeeper in front of you as you're answering. And then before our hour together ends, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statement in reverse alphabetical order. So for our first question, we will start with Mr. Casey Huffman. What skills, abilities, and experience equipped you to be an effective legislator?
So as an attorney, one of the things I do is deal with people that don't necessarily want to do things that we'd like them to do. That can definitely be a trait that will come across in the legislature. Yes, we have our own caucus, we have people that agree with us, but when you're, in my view, when you're running in government, you need to have the collaborative approach. So first of all, I guess it would just be that approach. The other experience I have is when I was at Fort Purdy, we did a lot of government work, represented Leveling, LTD, Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission. Got to see how government worked there, and MWC was one of the ones that I sort of hold out, because you had elected official from Springfield, elected official from Eugene, a Lane County elected official, and then members from the public. They spanned from far right to far left viewpoints. They all got together. They didn't always agree, but they worked well together. That's an approach that I would like to take as well. And seeing how it was done in the room, advising them on things, I think definitely will help prepare you for all things that come up in the legislature.
Thank you. Kori Rodley.
Thank you. So I've spent the majority of my career working in human services and nonprofit management with some dips into what I call mission-driven small businesses, local small businesses. My experience in terms of the sort of entrepreneurial, how do you run an organization? How do you fund that organization? How do you advocate for what you need for that organization has been really useful as I've joined the city council. I started out on the budget committee and I've had years of experience, not only fundraising, but working on budgeting and strategic planning and how do we move an organization or a project from here to there. Also, I'm a little bit seasoned, so I've worked on several ballot measures and worked on campaigns and worked on advocating for things that ordinary folks need. I say it all the time, I am like just a firmly blue collar working class Democrat. And so I sort of come up in the labor movement and I've brought a lot of that sensibility to my work.
And Ky Fireside.
Thanks. So like I said, I've already been doing some of this work. I helped write Senate Bill 1516, which it was a privacy bill, helped protect some of our locational data from private companies and from the federal government. This bill passed the Senate unanimously and it passed the House almost unanimously. So there was large bipartisan support. And in the process of coming up with the perfect wording for this legislation, I worked with a lot of different stakeholders. I worked with law enforcement. I worked with the ACLU. I worked with subject matter experts who are tech people and cybersecurity people. So having those connections and working across the aisle is something that I've already done. And I do believe that is very important. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with Kori Rodley. What is the most pressing issue facing the Legislative Assembly in the next session?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I am gonna go with the budget. I think we're seeing a lot of things coming down from the federal government that are impacting what we need to do here in Oregon. I think it's gonna be a really hard, messy year to navigate how we protect the values and the services and the things that we Oregonians cling to and count on. And I also wanna say, as you know, we don't know. Right? So we can anticipate that it's gonna be the budget, and also things are flying at us fast and furious. And it's gonna be important to be able to pivot to deal with the big things that are coming at us while still staying focused on delivering for Oregonians on the things that people depend on and count on.
Ky Fireside.
Thank you. I think our biggest issue is federal overreach. The federal government no longer cares about the rule of law, and they are threatening every aspect of our everyday lives. They want to defund Medicare, defund Medicaid, and I think we can really fight against that if we work on passing healthcare for all. That way, even if they do get what they want and defund Medicare and Medicaid, we still don't have to worry about going bankrupt from a cancer diagnosis. We don't have to worry about paying one of our regular bills or paying for medications. I think this is one of the most important ways that we can fighting back against what's happening at the federal health plan governance board, who's gonna make a suggestion this September for how we can transition to universal health care. So we'll be able to work on that right away once we get into the legislature in 2027.
Certainly agree with both of the things that they said. I would choose education. I think it is the core foundation of your community. It's something that takes a long time to get right. We've been working at it for a long time. In my view, we've got strong schools breed strong students. They tend to then be better workers. You can get development that wants to come in to get a strong labor force, an educated labor force. That in turns, you've got more people there to support the tax base, and it continues to reflect. Without that, you run into problems where you're not going to have as much economic development wanting to come along. And we see other parts of our society start to get less and less more downtrodden areas, and we don't need that. So my goal for that is education. You have to start it and keep funding it, empower the teachers. Once you make a connection with kids, they want to be there. You're going to have better results. So education would be my main focus.
Next question will start with Fireside. As a freshman legislator, how will you make your voice effective for your constituents?
Let's see, making my voice effective for my constituents is gonna take two things. That means I need to make my voice heard there, and I also need to make sure that my voice is reflecting the wants and needs of the constituency. I am a community organizer. I co-founded a community group last year that had input from all kinds of different voices throughout our community. And being able to listen to so many different perspectives helped inform how we were doing what we were trying to do. And just being welcoming to all those different voices meant that we could come up with new ideas. To make my voice heard, I've already been making relationships with both legislators and their staff in Salem. So I can get a meeting, people will actually talk to me, so they trust what I have to say. And I think that's gonna be really important too, because a lot of that is those interpersonal relationships.
Huffman?
So you have to listen first, right? We are representatives, meaning everybody out here in this room, everybody in the community, what they are interested in are the things we need to be interested in and to bring back. Certainly, we have our own views, our own issues that are important to us, but we represent the community. So you have to listen before you can speak. You also have to make connections with people. So one of the things that I would like to do is just sit down with other legislators, maybe that are on the Democratic side, certainly those that are on the Republican side, and if there are independents as well. Go out to coffee, get to know people. I think when you get to know people and you sit down and talk to them face to face, it's an easier time to get to a common ground. I have some neighbors that we always joke, he's got every Republican yard sign in his garage since back in the day. When I told him I was running, he brought over a Romney Ryan poster for me to have. So, but we get along, talk about it. You actually do talk. We're not that far away. So that's the same approach that I would try to take, is get to know people. Not always going to agree, but yeah, you put it in.
Thank you. One of the gifts of House District 7 is that it is Springfield. Many House districts are split up all over the place and have different pieces. It is Springfield. And I think that in addition to, what folks have said about the importance of one-on-one relationships, I think it's also really important to understand the issues that are facing Springfielders and to understand the historical context of that, what the barriers, the blockers, and the pluses have been, so that we can continue to move things forward. And I think that relationships are very important, and I feel very fortunate that I have worked over decades with people that are in all sorts of places in our community. They might be people in the chamber, they might be people who in nonprofit organizations. There are plenty of people that are in Salem and who work in other cities, in other municipalities, that I have been able to grow and have strong relationships with. And so I think that's part of that collaborative approach to making sure that they're at the table. And one of the things that I've said throughout this campaign is that what is driving me is to ensure that the Springfield voice is.
Right, and then we'll move back to Mr. Huffman. Do you support allowing more housing outside of urban growth boundaries or other efforts to expand housing affordability?
So the second part of that question we'll answer first. Yes, affordable housing is certainly something that we all need to think about and figure out ways to make that work. In terms of the urban growth boundary, that's a hard question, right? Because we have concerns about the slippery slope, right? If you keep pushing past what we've already identified. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but it would have to be a very compelling argument for me to want to expand it further. I'd like to see infill from where we're at now. I know ADUs have been something that has been approached in Springfield. There are some that have been accepting that. I'd like to see more people do that, more people understand that there's another option to have a good use of space.
And, Councilor Rodley.
Thank you. So probably as most people in this room know, Springfield is sandwiched between two rivers. There is not many places where we can go, so we try to get creative about infill. And we also have looked at how to expand the urban growth boundary, both for housing and for industrial use. Because we don't have a lot of them available. I am supportive of everything we can do to increase particularly affordable and workforce housing in Springfield. And it's gonna be a balance because there are a lot of different interests that play. But there's already been some great work that happened in the last session to push against like how do we expand the urban growth boundary to make it easier for people to annex in. So some of those lots are really big and there's a way to annex in some of those properties and increase housing density. So I think that we have the opportunity to get creative and also to like think of it from the Springfield lens, right? Like there's only so far we can go and then we're pushing up against those rivers and we're pushing against up against farmland, which we also need to preserve.
And over to Ky Fireside.
Yeah, this is the question where we have to pit environmental concerns with the reality that we're in a major housing shortage. The idea of the urban growth boundary originally was to protect some of the environmental land outside of our city and also to prevent sprawl. And the problem with sprawl is that we end up with food deserts, we end up with a lack of healthcare, and it's just an inefficient way to build. So I would also like to look at making sure we're efficiently using the land that's inside the urban growth boundary before we expand it. For example, there's a loophole in the state law that allows certain multi-unit construction buildings under 5 stories to not pay prevailing wage to their construction workers. And what this does is encourage building shorter buildings. Now, I get the idea of it was for multi-unit housing, but it's not being implemented, I think, the way that it was originally intended. So that's a specific thing that we can look at fixing.
We'll start with Kori Rodley. What role, if any, do you believe the state legislature should play in addressing income inequality in Oregon?
Oh, I think that the state legislature, the state legislature plays a role in helping address income inequality. I think, looking at, you know, the minimum wages, I think at looking at how do we support the development of living wage jobs that help people to build stability and to build wealth. I think that balancing the needs of industry and balancing the needs of big business with actually like how are we increasing jobs? And I think in the last section of the legislature, part of what happened was actually creating a tax credit. I think it's $1,000 tax credit. If I'm lying, somebody can throw a shoe at me. For small businesses to increase jobs that are they're above minimum wage jobs, right? So that's 50%. And again, but I think there are lots of things that we can do in the legislature that help to grow prosperity and grow, push against the income inequality that is happening. We may not be able to do anything about it at that level. We can totally do it.
The best way we can address inequality quickly is going to be passing healthcare for all. This has got cascading positive effects. If you run a small business, having to pay healthcare for your employees is extremely expensive. If you work in a labor union, a lot of our labor unions right now are in bargaining, and one of the things they have to bargain for is healthcare. If healthcare is a given, they get to focus on wages and working conditions instead. So I think having the healthcare for all passed is going to be a huge boon to creating a more equitable kind of economy for us.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach. We were both, Fan and Kori have said. One of the things that I actually want to do quite a bit of like there is looking for inefficiencies that currently exist, right? We've got a tax base that we use. I'm curious, and maybe I should talk to John a little bit more about this. How often do we look back and say, hey, we implemented this plan and we thought this is how it's gonna work? And is it working the way we thought it would, or does it need more funds, or maybe we overfunded it, right? And if there are those places where we can identify priorities or pull inefficiencies out of the existing tax base, that would help us from having to go back and out and asking people for. Sometimes we have to do that, but it's something that is concerning to me if we do it just as our first action. So that would be one of the bigger areas for me. I agree, again, with what both of them said. I do think the healthcare for all is gonna have cascading effects. That's a good way to put it, for sure.
As a legislator, you'll be representing many diverse viewpoints. What groups, programs, news outlets, etc., do you plug into to understand the issues of your community? We'll begin with Ky Fireside.
We've got a spectacular local media scene here. We've got the Lookout, we've got the Register Guard, we've got KLCC and Kezing and the Gadfly and so many other publications. So I can't promise that I read every single article, but I do try to plug into all of them because you can miss things, you know? I'm sorry, that was a two-part question or a one-part question?
One part, what groups, programs, news outlets do you plug into to understand issues of the community?
There's also a lot of like very niche local groups. There's the local hacker group, our local DevCon group, and these are cybersecurity professionals. They know a ton that you would never hear anywhere else. We've got, you know, our local Democratic Socialists of America that are paying really close attention to everything electoral, legislative, and labor related right now. And again, that's a great way to aggregate information that you might otherwise miss out on.
So on a national perspective, I try to look at a little bit of everything, you know, CNN to Fox News, just to get the, you know, the perspectives that are out there. I can't say that I read them every day, right? Probably for me, one of the things is just talking to my neighbors and my colleagues, trying to get their perspective about what they're seeing out there as well. I do appreciate the Lookout. I'm glad that they have come into town. You're doing a good job of more local stories. Yeah, I think groups like this are helpful as well, right? Because we've got like-minded people and people who disagree on some things. We need an opportunity to kind of talk with them about it, put on forums like this to hear other perspectives.
Thank you. I think that media is very important, and local media, national media is very important. And also, I think that when we're tackling really complex problems, the people who are most impacted are really important voices to have at the table. You know, I've gone into classrooms to see what teachers are actually experiencing, sit down with carpenters and find out like what's actually happening on the job sites. Had some great conversations with folks who were a part of Cocoon to find out like what is really happening in this work. Because I think that that media is great for getting this nice broad view or these interpretations of what's happening, and it helps us to stay connected. But when you are tackling these big complex issues, you've got to have those diverse perspectives and have an open door where you have people, whether it's from the chamber, whether it's from small business, whether it's from minority-owned businesses, who are coming together to help solve these problems. So I'm somebody who really wants to see and
We've recently learned that Oregon State Police shared resident information with ICE. If that reporting is confirmed, what do you think the legislator should do to better ensure our community is safe?
That's fine, conditional protection. There are federal rules to play and there are state rules to play, and sometimes they overlap. But the 10th Amendment says all rights that the federal government didn't take are reserved for the states. We need to be strong in what we believe and where. and protecting our citizens, right, is key. So for me, I think that was a mistake. What was the second part of the question?
What do you think the legislature should do to better ensure our community is safe?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I have an answer for you on that. That's one where I would need to sit down and talk to people who are more educated about that topic than I am right now, get perspectives, and then take that collaborative approach, try and find things out. That's gonna happen. There's lots of things I don't know, but I'm willing to find out, and that would be one of them.
Kori Rodley.
I absolutely agree with everyone that these are the sort of things that we feel very horrified about because we try to set up a state where that is not something that happens. I think that there is a role for the legislature to play. I also think there is a role for the attorney general to play. We have a legal branch of government for these very purposes. I will share that in 2016, 2017, I was involved with some work at the county level where we were investigating whether or not the sheriff's department was actually colluding with ICE. When they were releasing people and we toured the jail, we dug into that, as a group of folks that were like, we wanna make sure that it's codified in county code that we can then enforce. So we have the sanctuary laws, and when those are broken, that's when we have to team up with the entire state government. We need the governor, we need the attorney general, and we need the legislature to say, this is not who we are. We promised people this is not who we are, and we're ready to enforce that.
Oregon is a sanctuary state, one of the oldest ones. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about what our sanctuary law actually means. It's not very robust, and the legislature can work on making it more robust and better clarifying what counts as assisting immigration enforcement. Because right now, there is a lot of indirect assistance that local police and state police can pay to ICE. There's a lot of fear locally of coming up against the supremacy clause. The supremacy clause says when there's a disagreement, that's when. So what the state needs to do, what the legislature needs to work on is making a more robust sanctuary state law.
We'll start with Kori Rodley. Do you support tax reform to create a progressive tax structure to tax corporations and wealthy individuals at rates that fund public services?
I do support tax reform, and I support tax reform that maybe goes beyond the simplicity of that. I think that we have really hindered ourselves in the state of Oregon, which with Measure 5 and Measure 50. And we have been talking about how we need to come back and dig into that. We have definitely felt the pain of that in trying to govern at the city level. So I think we absolutely have to look at tax reform, but it's not just income tax reform, it's property tax reform. It's how are we going to fund important services here in Oregon? So it's not as simple as do we go after two big corporations or do we go after this? Sure, we look at it, we try to like get rid of the loopholes. We've built a system that is working exactly the way it was meant to work in terms of who benefits and who doesn't. And we've got to have the bipartisan appetite to really dig in and tackle this so that we stop putting taxes on the weight of ordinary working folks.
Ky Fireside.
Yeah, I worry that people focus too much on Measure 5 and Measure 50. If we just get rid of those, your property taxes and mine are going to skyrocket, and that's not fair. There are 72 or 73 corporate tax loopholes in our tax code right now that allow Amazon, Starbucks, Walmart, Home Depot to not pay their fair share in taxes. And the amount of tax that they have been paying over the years has been proportionally decreasing. The money is not gone from the state, it has just been concentrated in these pockets with these wealthy corporations, and they need to be paying their fair share. I know there's a lot of concern that they'll just jack up prices for consumers, but they are already charging you the most they think that you will pay for their products. That's why if you go to Starbucks, a coffee is $7 or $8 now. They know that that's how much they can charge for it. So I think that's the number one place we need to focus is these giant corporations, not small businesses, not people's property taxes, but Walmart, Amazon, Starbucks. Thank you.
Yeah, progressive tax is the only one that really works, right? It's been around since Lincoln. It's what has to happen. Those who can't pay a little bit more should pay a little bit. Um, whether that be in form of property taxes or corporate taxes or income taxes. The problems don't go away if we don't fund it, right? They just get pushed down the road. So how do we balance that is a key. Need a note, but I can't read it on my glasses. So I think taxes are, nobody likes them, right? If your taxes are too high, so are mine, right? I said that the other day somewhere else. But it's a community, right? We are here to support each other, and that means we have to support each other with our dollars. Sometimes it hurts more than we wanted to. But again, it's the community. I think that's one of the things that brings us together.
Yeah. On the topic of tax reform, what would you do to correct the school district deficit? We'll begin with Ky Fireside.
I mean, they need more money. We also have an issue though with our school district where we've got money set aside that we are not necessarily giving into. And the response to budget crises has been austerity, has been cutting. In January, they fired several dozen teachers to make up for a budget deficit. Meanwhile, we have executive staff making outrageous sums of money. They have travel that they get paid for to go to conferences. There's a ton of waste. I do think that the state having a proper tax structure to give schools more money is going to be part of the solution, but also making sure that there isn't some disproportionate spending on the school's budget is gonna help that a lot also.
Casey Huffman?
That's kind of what I said earlier about our biggest issue, education, right? We've got to fund our schools. And that's gonna be a combination of property tax, changes. I think Kori said it makes some sense, you know, in terms of measure 5 and measure 50. I graduated high school in '93. I just missed the effects of measure 5, but when I look back at some of the people that were 2 or 3 years behind me, they couldn't play sports anymore because they had to pay X dollars. Growing up for esports wasn't a lot of money for people to do that. We can't reduce our teachers though. We've got to keep the staff. The connection with the kids is the most important, and it should be. That means we need to empower our teachers. We need to make sure that they have the resources that they need to do their jobs done. Administrators are important. I can't just say we don't need them. We do, but I think we need to really focus our priorities on the kids in the classroom, getting them from elementary to middle to high school, and then into the workforce or into college. It works for them. Cottage Grove's done a great job with that recently. They've got some direct, sorry, time's up.
Thank you. And I will say that my daughter is a teacher and was one of the ones who was bumped from the high school to the middle school. So I had a front row seat to this, and a few weeks ago, I was actually in a classroom out in Thurston Middle School talking with teachers and students and administrators. So, you know, I think most of us understand that we've seen declining enrollment and we've seen challenges with how the formulas that we use to fund the schools. I think in addition to supporting our teachers, we also my daughter had to spend 2 years trying to get calculators in her classroom and she teaches geometry, right? So those funds are also not there. And we also have classified staff. We don't have enough people on the buses. We don't have enough people to help support the changing needs of the students in our public schools. I will always advocate for investment in public schools, and we have to get smart and creative about it and do it in a way that is gonna actually strengthen our schools and move things forward instead of just kind of holding it together.
Question will start with Casey Huffman. What is your plan to win the vote of all Springfielders in general, and not just the Democrats who are currently trying to win over in the primary?
You just gotta be yourself, right? That's who I am, right? And I'm not gonna try to change who I am to gain votes. I'm gonna tell you what I believe in, how I do things. And if you agree with my vision, then I hope you vote for me. If you don't, then I can understand that, right? Being yourself, I think being genuine in how you approach people, how you approach your job, is really the only way that I know how to do it. So that's what I'll do.
Kori Rodley?
Thank you. I love this question because it means that somebody out here really understands Springfield, right? We are a very purple district, and I will say that in my work on the Springfield City Council, one of the things I learned right away was that the voters elected me to be able to get this work done, and I was gonna have to find a way to work with everybody on that council in order to move the work forward. And I think it's gonna be very important, and I think some folks really understand this, who wins this primary. Rep. Lively has held on to this seat for 14 years and has done so by working across the aisle and having a deep understanding of the needs of the people who live in Springfield. And I think that's gonna be very important, is that we have to make room for different voices, not just the voices that agree with me or that I think are right. But in order to create lasting, sustainable policies that benefits the people of Springfield, the person who wins the primary is gonna need to have those conversations and have those relationships.
Oh, I'm also gonna have that neighbor that gave out Republican signs, go out and do some more campaign.
Yeah, a difference in politics is just a difference in the idea of how we solve our problems. What I have learned with my community work, especially the privacy advocacy that I've done, is that we have so much more in common than we realize, because we think things are so divided right now. But the truth is that everybody wants a little bit of privacy still. Just about everybody wants to make sure they're not being spied on. We all are having trouble affording things. We all need healthcare. We have so much more in common than not. And so I've been able to bridge some of those gaps. I've made a lot of relationships with people on the other side. I've been called a progressive libertarian. So I think, we're partly there already. It's about acceptance.
Next question, we'll start with Kori Rodley. What specific role do you believe a state rep should play in advancing economic development in our region? And how would you support or improve the governor's prosperity initiatives to ensure it delivers measurable results for local businesses?
Oh, I have big opinions about this, and I'm looking right. As we've had lots of conversations. One of the things that municipalities really need is investment in infrastructure. It is very hard to, attract businesses if we don't have places for them to go, if we don't have fiber, if we don't have roads. It's the same with sort of barriers to housing. It's really important to have the state legislature understand how those investments in local infrastructure and the things that we need on the local level are so important. It's also important to understand how some of the things that come out of the state create barriers to us being able to do that. And sometimes you've got people that are, you got representatives from all over, and you might have a lot of folks from Portland who have an idea about what transportation and what infrastructure should look like and how that rolls out in the city of Springfield. I can tell you I have a firsthand experience of how challenging that can be. So I think it's really important to have a representative who understands the district and understands the needs that will actually help them.
Hold on to Ky Fireside.
So a major failure of our current economy is that we don't have jobs. There simply are not jobs here. If you go on Indeed right now and you look for local work, a lot of it's in healthcare, a lot of it requires a license already. And there just aren't a lot of options. I think it's gonna be really important to make sure that we are bringing more jobs, not just to the state, but to this region, because we do have a fairly dense population here. And the lack of work is causing cascading negative effects like homelessness and poverty. We used to have a really robust logging industry, but an extractive economy is not a good long-term solution. So we need to look at bringing other industries in. We need to look at not outsourcing jobs to other states. And we need to focus on just bringing more jobs here.
I think we should leverage what we already have here, right, as part of it. We're close to U, right? We've got folks that want to come into town for that, lots of things, they want to look at the sports side of it. Happens to be, we've got the rivers here. I think if you look back many, many years ago, Gateway wasn't the shining example of Springfield. And through private public partnerships, they brought in some folks that were willing to spend some money, put it in hotels. That brought in more conventions that were coming here, got people from the area, brought in more restaurants, brought in additional businesses and shops, renovated the mall. Those are the types of things that I think you've got to pair your public dollars with the private folks that are doing it. So outreach to industries that we think might be a good fit here, would be important. Do you think there's definitely some push pull between the private sector and the government sector? And if we can bridge that, we've got a lot to offer here. We should definitely highlight that.
Thank you. Given budget concerns in Salem, where do you land on increasing funding for arts, culture, and humanities grants, beginning with Ky Fireside?
I mean, my top priorities for budget are healthcare and education, but I do want to see money for arts. Our state budget is about 1,600 pages long, and I have read it. And there are some really ridiculous things in it that we're spending money on that we don't need to spend money on, that we could instead be spending on arts or education or healthcare. So we need to take a really good look at that and figure out what exactly our priorities are and where we think it's acceptable to spend money. This last session, they passed $5 million for horse racing and county fairs. $5 million is a drop in the bucket, but I don't see why we're spending $5 million on horse racing right now. So we need to be really, really detail oriented when we're making budget decisions.
Casey, Huffman.
It's fine to do community more well-rounded. I think the arts are an important part of that. It's prioritization. You know, I can't disagree with what Ky said, right? Where do you draw that line? And there's some times when you can't go to Disneyland, right? For some kids, the money isn't there, but we'll do something closer. Or something like that. So you're not going to eliminate them, right? You can't just say, no, there's no money for the arts at all. Don't like that as an option, but you have to weigh priorities. That's a difficult thing to do. I think that's going to take some community discussions, see where people land on it. From my personal perspective, I'd like to see the arts be supported. I don't know if it's at the level that everyone's going to want, but again, those are the hard choices that have to be made.
Thank you. I will say that here in the city of Springfield, the role that arts have played in economic development is, we cannot disentangle those from the Wildish Theater to the murals, to the things that we have invested in order to help to build a very livable community. So I think it's really about balance. And there is a time and a place. Y'all get as sick as the people that have worked with me for 30 years. Like a budget is a plan and not a promise. And there are different times when we have to focus on different things depending on what's coming at us. But I think there's always a role for the arts and humanities in what makes a livable community and what makes a livable state. And we also have to be paying attention to those, healthcare, education, the cost of living, the living wage jobs, all of those other things that we need to be investing in. So I don't think it's a zero sum either or game. It's how do we make it fit together and how we partner with whether it's nonprofits, whether it's other arts organizations or the private sector.
Recruiting and growing jobs means recruiting and growing businesses. How should the legislature better facilitate this goal? Start with Casey.
Sort of follows up on a little bit of what I was talking about before. When you try to bring businesses in, you have to reach out to the folks that have the business, right? What are they looking for? What are the things that they're interested in? Is it a labor market that works for them? Is it a tax structure? What are the things that I would point to make folks who offer a job want to come here? There are some challenges in work. You see businesses leaving a lot. Dutch Brothers, always smaller, bigger with there are a number of issues that are out there. I don't know all of them, but I do know there are some significant drawbacks right now that are keeping businesses from coming into town. What I'd like to do is find out from the business people themselves, what are the major ones, right? What are the things that are the biggest problems for you, and see what sort of solutions might be out there. It's going to take lots of conversations. It's not going to be the same for every industry. So it's a challenge for sure, but I think it has to start with communication.
We're done.
Thank you. I am a fan of growing homegrown businesses whenever possible. And that may mean how do we support folks to start their first small businesses? And it also means how do we invest in businesses that have been here, help them expand and grow? And that has been one of the rules in our economic development work that we've done in the city of Springfield. Is like we have established folks who have union workforces who are paying living wages. How do we keep those industries here and support them in how they move to the next level? Often we do try to attract outside businesses, and sometimes we left, right? And they have not focused. Like, I'm very interested in how do we grow more entrepreneurial businesses? How do we support the folks who are here? How do we make the climate as supportive as possible for people who want to live and work here to be able to have a business that supports living wage jobs?
So we kind of have this idea that businesses have been leaving Oregon, but in the last 10 years, we've actually had more businesses come here than we are on an upward trend to encourage business, is encouraging local business, small business, and not just helping out the giant corporations. I think our small businesses are what give us character, they're the economy that's supporting the entire city. We've got, great coffee shop culture, but whatever it is that we're doing is specifically helping and not just giving yet another tax break to a giant corporation.
I lost my place. Let's go to Kori Rodley. Thank you. You did already did.
I will say much more about that.
Thank you. Okay, I was looking at the time. This will be our final question then. So the question is, what would be your first task as legislature?
The legislator,
Thank you.
is childcare and increasing affordable childcare in all of the places and all of the ways. And it's something I've worked on in various ways, and I've been talking about it throughout this campaign. It's something that I've been able to work on in the city of Springfield by saying we can't be open for business if we don't have additional childcare. So early childhood education is a passion, and I know that there's already work moving at the state level and a lot of interest in how do we do this better in Oregon. So I think that's why it's towards our workforce. It's so important. So it's one of the top things that I would love to work on is to dig into how do we increase childcare quality, affordable, if not free childcare for folks.
First priority is whipping votes for healthcare for all. We've got a lot of people who are already committed to it, but we also got a lot of new people coming into the legislature. This is gonna be such a process, but it's also gonna happen really quickly. We know that insurance companies are gonna lobby very hard against this, so we need to lead a proactive education campaign against whatever misinformation they're going to try and spread. I think it's also important for us to point out that healthcare for all is really going to help people in rural areas. I think there's a thought that Republicans are gonna vote against it, but it's gonna help those districts a lot. So whipping votes for healthcare, that's step number one.
Like I said earlier, the first thing you need to do is listen. You need to learn, find out the people that you're working with. Don't try to do too much would be the other thing that I would say, right? We all have great ideas. You're not gonna be able to show up on day one and just make stuff happen. But you need to know people, who they are personally. I think that's gonna help any negotiations you have on any topic. So for me, day one is gonna be meeting somebody I don't know, probably somebody that I disagree with, and just go out and try to sit down, find out how far apart are we going, rather than, like might get reported about what people have a better chance of being heard. And I think you also do a better job of listening, considering other viewpoints. So for me, that's gotta be the first thing, is using other people you're going to work with, try to build those relationships so that you can have a productive session.
All right, thank you. Our candidates will now have 2 minutes each for their closing statements in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll begin with.
I just want to thank you all again for being here and spending your afternoon with us. And I want to thank City Club, and I want to thank the bunch of voters. These forums are so very important. It has been the honor of my lifetime to serve as a city councilor. And I have learned so much about the city that I love. I've been able to work with people that I have such completely different approaches and different ideas about things, and we're able to get to agreement about where we need to go and what is best. And I think that, as I said in my opening statement, these times are really hard. And the problems are really big. So it's not just like a 1, 2, 3 and we're done. It's gonna take like this digging in and bringing every bit of experience, every bit of compassion, every bit of intelligence that we have to solve these problems in a way that people are gonna come out benefiting. And I think that it's such a key and important time for us as a state. I definitely have felt it in working in the city of Springfield. It has been a period of transition. We have navigated so much, and we're moving forward. And so I think it's gonna be important to, for us to all just sort of stick together as a community. And whoever we send to Salem in November has got to deeply understand the needs of this community. So I just want to thank you all for being here, because I know that means that you are people who care about the needs of this community. And many of you I've talked with and had emails from, and we're gonna have to just, like, for the love of Springfield, we're gonna have to just stick together, shoulder to shoulder. And I am so looking forward to having you all with us when we get there in November. Thank you.
So I didn't mention that your Reedsburg was a small town. Sometimes felt a little bit out of the way, right? We were that part of Douglas County, that they got the coast right, and Reedsburg went just right. So being heard at the legislature, is important to me, right? We need to advocate. Fortunately, Springfield's got a little bit more cachet, I guess. Being left out doesn't feel good. One of the things that I tried to do, to avoid that is to become involved in the community. I've been in a number of organizations, Lane Memorial Olympic Board of Directors, Albert Taylor Board of Directors. I was president of the Lane County Bar Association for a while, served 10 years on the Oregon Community Credit Union Board of Directors. Those were all different things that I learned about our community, needs-based. The OCCU portion was one of the things we looked at for community development. It was one of the things we did for rates and things like that. I think those are important things to continue to try to leverage and advance the legislature. As a father of 4, I've learned that there's not just one way to do things, right? Each of my kids, one who's in the back there that you're coming with, have their own way, and they can all be right. So we have to learn to not just force our view on the way it goes. As a coach, I've learned that small details are important because they can lead to different outcomes that hopefully work out for you. And then as an attorney, I've learned that you work with people. It's an adversarial approach, but it doesn't have to be difficult. You should be able to leave every case and still be friends with the people that you work with. That's something that I've been doing for 25 years and will continue to do that. That would be my goal. My approach would be to stay who I am, stay true to things that I have believed, which try to give you a taste of what those were. And do a good job representing Springfield. Try to continue what John has started. And,
So the political climate that we're in today has a lot of us in crisis mode, and it's really easy to feel hopeless. And I'm not quite there yet. I think we can still dig ourselves out of it. All of the problems that we're having though are extremely complex. And something that I would really like to see in the legislature is bring back the work group. This used to be a pretty common way of solving our problems. You get your stakeholders together, different community members, subject matter experts, and you bring people together in a work group to work on legislation that will help solve the problem. At some point, we shifted away from that and we started listening mostly to lobbyists, or some of us, some did. And so whatever to do is bring back that community work group, those community voices. And get all these different perspectives so that we can maybe find a more creative way to solve some of our problems. Last year I was in work groups, so I got seen. And so I want to do more of that. I want to make sure there are diverse community voices. I want to make sure everyone is feeling heard. And I want to make sure that the people who are being affected have a say in it. Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere just yet. Let's have a quick round of applause for our candidate. We appreciate their time of being here today and being willing to represent us in Salem. I'll head back over to the city club. Thank you.
Thank you, Callie. Really appreciate the candidates being here again today, and you all for being here and participating by writing questions, turning them in. Really great questions that were added along with ours, so really appreciate that. Our May 21st, program is still being worked on. We will have details emailed out. We, get those confirmed. If you, again, aren't on our email list, please fill out at least the green sheet, and you'll get the notice about the May 21st program once we finalize those details. Okay, let's give the candidates another round of applause for taking the time today.